Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today we continue our podcast right here at BusyWorksBeats.com. Today we're going to cover how to get placements in the traditional music industry. This one comes from Maybe CLJ. We have a new Instagram broadcast channel. He asks how to sell beats and get placements effectively. All right, that was his, and then it has 3 upvotes. And then we had another question from Jedi Wright, marketing placements with companies, and will beat battles return? So the answer for the beat battles is yes. So let's get into the placement thing. Now, most people who talk about placements, they act like there's a formula. I can tell you guys and guarantee there is no formula for getting placements. There's no magical pathway. There's no guarantees with placements. If it's a probability game, okay? Probability. So keep that keyword in the back of your mind. So for people who are wondering of my credentials, if you don't know me, I'm Game from BusyWorksBeats.com. We train over 1 million producers around the world, so I'm going to work with Drake, Kanye West, Post Malone, Ariana Grande, French Montana, Young Thug, Polo G, Trippie Redd, Lil Baby, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, long list of folks that I'm going to forget every single time. I work with brands, which is more control in my hands. Most people chase the artists, and I'm going to get into the whole system here. So here's how the hierarchy works in the traditional music industry. Let's make this font nice and large here. So we have Sony, which most folks deal with Sony. We have Universal, and then we have Warner. Okay, so hip hop stuff's mostly I've seen on the Sony side. Okay, and then we have underneath these, I call them point men, okay, or point people. So these point people are the go-to kind of liaisons for different opportunities, like a Major 7. I'm not going to name everybody because I don't know everybody. Let's just say Major 7, Boy Wonder, okay? I'll just say Illmind because I know he's done a lot of camps. Who else does camps? I don't know every single person. Let's just leave it to these 3. Okay, then under these folks, then you have everybody else. Okay, then you have what's called loop makers, beat makers, musicians, songwriters, all the technicians they're called. There's a good book about this that you guys can understand called E-Myth by Michael Gerber. It will explain a lot about this hierarchy. So here's the issue is that people want to get placements without understanding where placements come from. It's kind of like trying to get water from the top of a mountain without ever going near the mountain. It's impossible. Okay. So again, the biggest mistake is people aren't aligned with people who are in this structure. This is usually how placements arrive, whether it's a brief for a film, whether it's a placement with an artist, publishing opportunity, whatever it is, it usually comes from the top 3. These people control the market when it comes to the traditional music industry. They own the market. So chances are opportunity is going to come from the people at the top because they own the money of the market. Okay. You're not going to get the opportunities from anybody who does not control the market. Okay. Or control deal flow. This sounds more complicated than what it is. I'm just trying to break the fairy tales in you guys' mind. So here's a quick story. I was in what studio? I won't even name the studio, but it was out in Hollywood. And, I had, what was it, 5 or 6 producers in the room. We had Diego Ave, shout out to Diego Ave. He booked the session with Go Grizz. Swish was in there. Nas Moore, who produced for like Migos and them. He was on the Murder Gang with Murder Beats. And somebody else popped up, if I'm not mistaken. There was somebody else I think that was it actually. So just those couple of folks, their streams were 10 billion plus in that room. It was like 5 people who produced songs that got over 10 billion streams. Just those 5 people. And what I realized very quickly is that in this industry, you have to figure out how to get in the circles of people who are doing stuff. Okay. Like this sounds way easier said than done. Okay. So here we have corporation. All right. And then we have underneath that corporation, we have people. Okay. We'll call them not gatekeepers, but decision makers, we'll call them. Okay. And then we have people at the bottom who are fighting for opportunity. We'll just call these opportunity seekers. Okay. So I'm going to keep reiterating over these concepts because I want you guys to understand opportunity is random. However, when you increase your probability to be around opportunity, opportunity arrives. Okay. And I'll show you my approach to the industry to where I'm not relying on these companies in the same exact way. So the corporation in this case would be your Sonys, your Universals, your Warner. Let's create a scenario real quick. Let's just say Sony's coming out with the film. You got to keep in mind that Sony owns a ton of other companies, including the headphones that I'm wearing right now, Audeze. They own Audeze. I didn't even know that. Sony owns Audeze, and these are the Audeze MM500s, the greatest headphones I've ever had in my entire head. Okay, so let's say Sony sends over a film brief. Okay, now the brief is like, it's like a dossier for the mission at hand. So it's like, hey, I need all this music in a style like this, slow, fast. Here's the mood. Here's the vibe. We're giving you what we need. It's basically a call to action. Okay, so that's what they call a brief. Now, the point people, let's say a Major 7, shout out to Major 7. He has a huge collection of talented folks. Okay, so let's say they send it to Major 7. Okay, and they have a budget. Let's just say they have a $50,000 budget for this specific featured film for music. Okay, so they'll send him the film brief for this budget that they have, and he will then either make the music himself. And I'm not putting this onto his business because he's his own producer and artist and businessman. But I'm saying metaphorically, a Major 7 would either make the music himself and, get the budget or do whatever with the budget, or he can allocate that budget to different people because maybe they're asking for some style that he's not a master at. So let's say he's a master at like reggae or dance hall, I meant to say. Let's say he's a master at dance hall. I don't know his strengths, but I'm sure it's a lot of genres. Okay, so let's just say dance hall, hip hop, R&B. Let's say that's his bag. That's like his favorite genre to make. Again, I'm using this as a metaphor because I don't know all his styles. Okay, so let's say he's strong in dance hall, hip hop, R&B, pop, but then he has people around him that could be you that is a master at K-pop, a master at neo soul. Okay, a master at classical piano. All right, so this is where you're going to hear a lot of advice for you guys that talks about placements. The advice is going to be get better at your craft because they're coming from the perspective of a person who has opportunity coming to them, and they need to recruit people like you who are skilled at the craft to take on the challenges that they have. So when you hear advice, most of the time they're giving you advice from this perspective, the person who is the point person or the person who gets briefs, but they don't have all the skills to fulfill the brief. Okay, so they need to increase their network in order to take on more and more budget. All right, so that's where the perspective that you guys are getting is from this point of view. But your problem is that you need perspective from this point of view, the bottom point of view. The issue with this is that the people at the bottom always are waiting for the opportunity to come to them, which is a good and a bad thing because personal brand is what rules this category. What makes you stand out from the next person? In order to build your personal brand, you want to think about the 2 words people think about when they say your name. So if you say Busy Works Beats, what 2 words come to your mind? You might say FL Studio, you might say music theory, you might say music production training. Whatever those 2 words are for you, that is the personal brand. That's something that I consistently reinforce content piece after content piece after content piece because I want people to remember me for those 2 things. So everybody's brain is like a Google search, and you guys want to establish yourself around 2 things that people can top of the mind think of you. And hopefully that top of the mindness, you don't have competition. So this is where a lot of people have struggle standing out because they don't build skills or create a brand that stands out from other keywords in people's minds. So again, if I were a Major 7 and I got a $50,000 budget for a featured film, and then they need K-pop, they need pop music, they need R&B, they need neo soul. Maybe I can make a couple of those genres, but I'm willing to tap into my network because my network is experts at K-pop, experts at neo soul, experts at classical piano. So now I can pass the opportunity along, take a small percentage because I gave them the opportunity. And now I can work not only hands-on doing the brief myself, but I can also have somebody else work at the same time. Now we're growing the business because now we're both working at the same time, but I'm leveraging somebody else's work. So that is how you grow in the traditional music industry. And understanding that money comes from the top of the chain. Without this chain, this does not work. Okay, so that's where a lot of people kind of get confused when it comes to the industry. Again, if you hear anybody guarantee you that placements, there's a process for placements and there's like this magical formula, there is none because it's all about just personal decision. Now, persuasion plays a huge part in this as well. I don't want to make this so technical, but there's different ways to get placements. So the next one is dealing with artists directly. So here you have a peer-to-peer approach, I'll call it peer-to-peer approach. Now, the peer-to-peer approach, this requires a lot of luck unless you're attracting talent through culture. Okay, so here's where you would have a producer and then an artist communicating directly. So you might have a producer who just grew up around an artist. They came from the same town. The issue that the artist has is trust. Okay, they can't, if they're spending a lot of money on music and other things, they need to trust that this person actually cares to give them good music, to give them music that is going to fit their vibe, trust that they're going to deliver, and trust that it's actually going to work. Okay, so there's a lot of trust elements that goes into being an artist. And they have to trust that you won't flake out. You're not going to build a sound with them and then ditch them. Okay, because it happens the other way around too. Artists ditching producers. So the artist's frustration at this point is, if I were an artist that just got signed to a big major label, they're giving me a loan. What are they doing with the money basically from the major? They're trying to acquire talent. If this were Shark Tank, they only give money to the people who have sales, meaning they're only going to pour fuel on you when you already have the fire going. They're not going to give you the fire and the fuel and the tools to make the fire, unless what a lot of people want is handouts. Nowadays, the record labels are in a merger and acquisition type of approach. They're not here to develop artists. They're here to take over your business so that they could take the revenue, because their game is defeating the competition. If the whole wide world, if music got democratized and streaming basically made it so that everybody can compete in the music field, the issue that the labels have is that now they have millions of competitors. How do you take out your competitor? You build a platform so that you capture the wealth of your competitors, and you make it, you make the rules and terms against the people who can potentially take out your talent. So the number one game that the industry is in is mergers and acquisition. They're here to acquire businesses, AKA you have to have your business going before they acquire you. Your social media has to be popping. You have to have a fan base. You have to have sales. All this matters when you get signed. Okay, so anyhow, dealing with peer-to-peer, you get rid of some of those barriers, okay, but it still requires a lot of trust. And getting in touch with an artist is hard enough. And artists don't have the same, not all artists don't have the same, conviction that A&Rs and producers have to find talent. They're just looking for somebody they can trust and they can work with. Again, now an A&R might go, okay, he's the next sound, she's the next sound. Producer might go, okay, he has the dopest drum sound, get into the particulars of the craft. But if I'm somebody who's not in the craft, I'm not worried about all the little nuances. I just want to find somebody I can trust, build with, and hopefully that person knows other people that they can leverage to bring into the equation. So trust is one of the number one things an artist needs in order to deal with a producer, in this case, directly. Now, the producer, they're going to need opportunity or some kind of equity. I'll just say equity, because equity is not always the case, meaning percentage ownership. So let's just say opportunity / equity. All right. Now, what does this mean? If you find an artist who doesn't have a huge fan base and you want to work with that artist, you might say, okay, let's do everything 50-50. That's equity. You're building up shares in a company. Okay. So that when the company IPOs or when the company sells their shares, you have 50% of the company. Okay. So you're building up a company, a startup. Okay. In that case. Now, the producer who is trying to latch on to somebody who's already popping, remember, like I said, people want to pour fuel on people who already have the fire going. So everybody wants to work with Future, The Weeknd, Drake, Kanye West, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar. They already want to work with the top artists. Why? Because they already have the fire going. Okay. Now, most people want to approach the producer-artist relationship as like an employee-employer perspective. And this is why you guys got to break this, because if you keep the employee-employer perspective, you're not going to have leverage in the relationship. You're going to be seen as not, a person that stand out. Okay. And this, I realize now, talking about all this goes into so much psychology that I'm going to have to break this down even further in another video. The next layer of opportunity is so we went to peer-to-peer. We did the featured film approach. Now let's talk about the producer camps and songwriting. Okay, so I know Derico has a producer camp coming up pretty soon. So here's what a lot of point people will do. So like the Major Sevens of the world, the decision makers of the world, they'll host events called producer camps. The whole point of a producer camp, now different ones have different terms and whatever. Some people may make you sign agreements as you go in the camp, meaning anything that we create, you get, a set percentage or a set fee or whatever the thing is. Everybody has different terms in the way they handle producer camps. So there's no like rule book for producer camps. It might even, some people I could even see having terms where it's like, don't expect any equity coming into the camp. Anything we create is owned by this person and blah, blah, blah. So there could be a lot of conversations around ownership. Okay. Ownership of assets created. But in the producer camps, they bring in songwriters. You've seen it with Kanye. They bring in songwriters, producers from around the world. Those people create like a hodgepodge of stuff. And then whatever is good is pitched to the artist, pitched to the label, pitched to the film opportunities. Okay, so the products that derive from the camp get either pitched or used in an album, depending on who's throwing the camp. Okay, so that is how that works. Now, getting in a producer camp is just a matter of the personal brand, because what do people know you for? Like, shout out to Yonatan. People know Yonatan for his dope vocals and his dope ear for sound, his R&B sound. Okay, so what do people know you for? What is your thing? Are you in their awareness? How do you get in their awareness? You make content. That's how people like Metro Boomin follow me. Shout out to Metro Boomin on Twitter, Instagram. And he was like saying, you can find this on the website. He said, I appreciate what you do for the community. So shout out to Metro. How did Metro find my stuff? Through content. How did David Guetta find my stuff? Shout out to David Guetta, follows me on Instagram. How did he find my stuff? Content. How did Flostradamus find my stuff? Content. Shout out to Flostradamus. How did Irko, who mixed all of Donda, find my stuff? Content. How did, I'm trying to think of like Rodney Jerkins find my stuff? Content. Specifically my chord codes. How did Warren G find my stuff? Chord codes. Content. Music theory content. How did, who else is a big name? Teddy Riley. Funny enough, the only person that I actually like respect to a deep level. He's the person that made me want to make music. Funny enough, it's such a full circle moment. But Teddy Riley, shout out to him, followed me and reached out. And how did he find me? Content on FL Studio. So you have to decide how people know you. Okay. And that is up for your life journey to put out there. But what is the thing that you put out there consistently that you keep reinforcing over and over? What are those two words people know that they associate with your name and your brand? Okay. So for me, content, just the reason content is so important is not because the value that's in the content. It's because you get to see what people think before you have a conversation with them. So by the time you get on the phone with the person, you feel like you already know them. It's really hard for me to like want to schedule calls and business talks from people that don't have content because I can't check their character before we hop on the call. So content is a social proof element for me. It says, hey, this person not only delivers value, but now I can check their demeanor through their content. And that will give me a better introduction. So by the time we get on the business call, we can talk about either the content or talk about what we're trying to build. And I have a better understanding of that person. People without content, it's almost like it feels sketchier to not have content. So that's why I tell people to make content and build up your personal brand. I realize this video is probably going to be super long. So if you guys want something specific, these are pretty much the most basic ways opportunity happens. And again, the game is not to, how do I explain this? The game is to bring the probability into your favor. Okay, that's the game. So the more you're waiting on a handout and just hoping and praying and sending out cold emails, that's not going to work. Oh, you know what? I forgot one other way, which speaking of content, is content. So to get placements, a lot of people make content. What is that content? That content could be a producer pack. It could be a loop pack. You might have a sound design company, okay, that people got to know. And then now they respect your sound design. And now when they download your packs, your terms and conditions, they'll reach out to you because they have respect for you now. Okay. Or just content where you're educating people or sharing tips or whatever. Okay, so content is one of the secrets because, like I said before, people get to know your personal demeanor, outside of just the thing that we're transacting. So it's a lot easier to read people once you can see their content, in my opinion. And also with content, you can deliver it out to thousands of people at a time. And that is increasing your probability. Okay. Because now, let's say 1 out of 10,000 people got a major placement. So now it's just a numbers game. It's not like trying to find the person and suck up to the person and be a pick me, for the person. It's just like, how much content can I get out there to get my exposure to a certain level? And now it becomes a numbers game. And again, if you guys want particulars, we can go deeper with this. I don't want to bore you to tears with math. Okay. But it's just probability. So let's go all the way back to the beginning for people who skipped ahead. In the traditional music industry, you have three top companies: Sony, Universal, Warner. They run the music industry. They own the music industry. They are not in the game of finding talent and developing talent. They are in the game. They're not like, let's make a metaphor. They're not in the game of creating startup companies. They're in the game of acquiring other companies. The same way Microsoft is not in the startup company. They are going to find an open AI to buy open AI because they want them under their umbrella. That's the game that the record labels are in. They're trying to acquire companies. Disney owns ESPN. It owns, I don't even know all the companies Disney owns, to be fair with y'all, but they own a lot of different companies. It's not just Disney Channel that Disney is responsible for. So these corporations are not in the game of starting new companies, because when you start a new company, it's high risk and it's too much risk. They'd rather just buy a company that is proven to work. Okay. And so the same thing goes with these music companies. So when we talk about people getting signed and people getting opportunities and all that, they have to see the fire first. Okay. Now, most of the time, you guys will hear about placements from these type of folks, the point people. I call them the point men. Major seven. Anybody who has a circle around them. There's different circles out there. There's different camps. They call them camps for a reason, because they host camps a lot and have like a circle of people. So Major Seven's one I know for sure. A Boy Wonder would be a point person to get opportunities most of the time. And I'm just putting Illmind in here because I know he did a lot of events around the US. Okay. So you got to find the point people in the game. Okay. Who do these companies consistently go to over and over and over and over and over again? You got to find those people. That's your job to do the work. Now, most people want to come in the game as a loop maker, a beat maker, a musician, or a songwriter. That's great. But like I said, this company, these top three companies are not in the game of breaking your company. They're not in the game of building your startup. They are not in that game. They are in the game of acquiring existing, working, and profitable businesses. So if you are not doing that, that's why you're not getting the attention of these companies. Now, you might get the attention of the middle rung of this pyramid, which are those point people. But those point people are looking for something very specific. Okay, so let's move on to the next pathway, which is dealing with corporations outside of Sony, Universal, and Warner. You still have to deal with the director and artist relations. You have to deal with the director of creative. You always have to deal with some decision maker at some point who is an employee of the company, the corporation. So this is the psychology you have to understand, is how to persuade people. And most of the time, the decision makers of companies, we're talking like corporations and more commercial stuff like Nike, Adidas, all that. These people are employees. They're scared to lose their job, so they can't take too much risk. You have to understand that and acknowledge that. So what these people look for mostly is existing social proof. So if you had a bunch of music videos up, a bunch of pictures with you and people they know, okay, they look for a lot of social proof elements, comments and engagement. They look for all the like surface level stuff because they don't have time to dig into your history, who you are as a person, and sit there and research you. They're just in the game of making a quick decision to media buy. Okay. And so the opportunity seekers in that case are usually sought out by these decision makers, because the decision makers are actually doing the work of trying to figure out who's in the field, who are the point people in the field. So that is their job, is to go scout the media for them to actually go by. Now, the opportunity seekers are waiting for handouts most of the time, and they're not building their brand. And that's why they're not getting any corporations to come reach out to them. So this is the art of building an audience, galvanizing a people who have a commonality, a psychograph it's called. Let's move on to the film opportunities. In film, they'll have there's certain things like you're going to get a brief, okay, which is an explanation of what the film is about, what they need, the budget included. Now, these guys want their music usually fast, and they want original music. That's another thing I forgot to mention. They want a lot of original music. Dare you use a splice loop? That's They just don't trust Splice and all that because of copyright issues. So anyhow, with the film stuff, you still need a point person most of the time because film is a very trust based system. Now you guys can talk to Clint Music, XJ Will for this, particulars on if you should submit to a sync library or if you should just meet somebody in the industry. From my experience, the film stuff is a lot more fluid when you meet the people in the industry. But again, it's a closed circle. If you're making thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars every time you get an opportunity, you think you're going to tell the world about the opportunity? No. So it's a very closed game. And you got to find people who are already in the game. Now, the cool part about film is that they are seeking artists to break. And I heard this directly from a film music supervisor. Okay. So we used to do a lot of networking on Clubhouse, and I would listen to this man talk all the time about who he was looking for. And they really listen to music. They love just listening to music. So they're very open to it. But the thing is, how do you know who's in charge of what? And that's the research you guys got to do on LinkedIn. You got to just go in and do research. But mainly, the cool part about Sync is that they seek out artists who aren't known, because if your film or your show gets the break-in artist, then all that attention goes back to that episode or that film or that documentary or whatever. So they hope to break artists because it's like having an infinite catalog. They're always going to come back to that film. And now it just perpetuates the promotion for it. So that's one thing about film that I do respect is they love to break artists. And also, too, they have budget restrictions, too. So that's another reason. But anyhow, if I were Major 7, I need to know that not only is this person an expert at K-pop that's in my network, I need to know they deliver fast, they deliver it accurately, and I can trust them that they made everything themselves. Okay, they didn't use loops and all this type of stuff. So that's why getting in these circles is tougher to do, because they have to have a lot of trust for y'all. Now, how do you build trust? You build trust by helping people, delivering value over time, showing your personality over time, and creating proof, social proof. And that's why personal brand is the number one asset you guys can build as far as placements. And again, if anybody tells you placements, there's a formula for it. They are either, again, misinformed or exaggerating heavily. Dare I say lying? Because, a lot of folks out there who you buy this thing to get a placement opportunity. Now, one thing I kind of keep forgetting to mention here with the personal brand, it keeps slipping my mind. I have like flashes of it and then I forget. It'll come back to me. The next is the Clubhouse story. So here's a story from Clubhouse. So I was doing a lot of public speaking, like 8 hours a day in 2020, 2021, just talking, doing public speaking on Clubhouse. And I got to network with a lot of people in the industry. And it's a very closed circle of people. Like they really are, they really draw that line, like who's industry and who's not, put it that way. And one time this opportunity came up when I was public speaking. Somebody just randomly needed help and they had an opportunity. And I think it was for like, 5,000 plus opportunity to work with the MLB for, some kind of field day they were doing after the pandemic. Random. Okay. So they needed a lot of help. They were stressing out. They were like, man, I need somebody who could do this, this, and this. And I was like, okay, I know somebody. And I connected the person who's an expert, top of the industry, music producer, like work the top artists in the world. Many, many, many of them has plaques on plaques on plaques. And I passed the opportunity to him because I was like, this is up your alley. You were just talking about X, Y, and Z. We were already doing business in another field in Web3. So I was like, okay, this makes sense to just add more value to our relationship. I'm not going to take it for myself because that's selfish. What if I passed it to build a relationship with this person that I was already building a business relationship with? Okay, so that's how I thought about it. And the opportunity was so random. There was no formula I followed. It was just somebody knew me for music production conversations. I added value to people. They saw that I wanted to help people. They reached out because they were in dire need of help. And then I just happened to be the person that could solve that. There's no formula for that. The only formula, if anything, was me putting out my personal brand to help people. Okay, so nextly, peer-to-peer approach is probably the most probability that you guys have because by default, you have a 50-50 chance here of winning. Whereas the traditional systems, you're going to have to fight other competitors for opportunities. It's the best mix gets picked, the best producer gets picked, and you guys have to fight for those. Whereas you have less competition when you deal directly with the artist and build a real relationship. Now, the hard part is talking about equity, and the hard part is just enduring the times where the artist isn't popping. You know, do you really believe in the artist where they're going to pop, and you could build that business to then get the attention of one of those three companies to then buy out the artist? So that's something that you guys have to invest. Like, it's an investment. You might not get upfront fees of 2,000, 5,000, but over time, 5 to 10 years, the artist might pop, and then you guys have equity so that you have a bigger stake. Okay, so nextly is producer camps, like I said, which is, I would say, probably the best opportunity for you guys to get into those circles. Okay, but again, the tricky part is that some people make you pay to be a part of the camp. So that is the part that's kind of confusing as somebody seeking opportunity, is you can't correlate pay. The thing is, again, placements are not guaranteed. Some people already have opportunities in deal flow, and they just need to have producer camps and songwriting camps because they need to figure out the best of the best to then pitch to the opportunities. But to say you can guarantee placements unless they have a direct relationship with the artist, there's no guaranteeing of placements. So that's the tricky part of this approach, is that there's no guarantees still. And then lastly, doing content. This is where you attract people and attract opportunities to you. This is the most leverage that you guys create because you create this world of opportunity. It's not based on somebody else and waiting on somebody else. And that's what I go after, because I can directly go, work with billion-dollar brands like a Sweetwater, which I've worked with Sweetwater, Avid, which is another billion-dollar brand. We did something with Razor Music for like 3 years called the Razor Blade campaign, alongside Metro Boomin, Murder Beats, Sunny Digital, who was on there? Deadmau5, Anderson .Paak. Okay, so I was on there for the longest time out of all those folks, which is 3 years. So that was Razor Music, Sweetwater, Avid, and I work with this Web3 company called Near, for those who know what Near is. So those are billion-dollar brands. The difference is they have the budget. Their objection is trust and turnaround time. Okay. And they need to know that they'll have the biggest reach and impact. So this is something you have to prove with your numbers. Now, most people don't have the numbers to back up their claims, and that's why they don't get a lot of opportunities with brands. So for the person, I think it was, let me read off the name here. It was Jedi Wright, says marketing and placements with companies. If you want to work with companies, you have to prove on paper that when they work with you, they will get a result. So every dollar they put in, you have to prove that they could turn the dollar into 4. Or if they give you $400, you need to prove that they'll get 4 million reach. I'm just, giving you rough numbers. 4 million is kind of up there, but let's just say 400,000. Okay, views. You need to prove that on average, you can deliver stuff like this. If you can't do that, they're not going to come working with you unless they plan on just using what's called avatar marketing. So this gets really deep, but if you guys want to learn something specific, so my approach is the latest, this last approach, because this approach gives you the most power. I don't have to wait on people. I don't have to worry about the next paycheck. I'm just delivering value directly to the audience, and the audience rewards what they like and what they don't like. Okay, so this is the strongest place to be, in my opinion, because you have a lot more control. Dealing with these other systems, there's not, a huge guarantee. And so you're always fighting upstream, quite literally, for opportunity. So this is my approach. And it's really hard to teach people how to think like this because they're too afraid to take a risk. But I'm telling you guys, all this other stuff came from this. So if I, like I said, when I handed that opportunity to a huge producer, when it was a multi-$1,000 opportunity with the MLB, okay, that was simply me knowing the producer. How'd the producer know me? Because I got in a business deal with my mentor, Chris Moyer. And we were working in the field of Web3, okay, helping people translate their music into Web3. So it was making content, okay? Content led to the peer-to-peer approach, and I traded that opportunity with him. So another way is a producer camp. I've been to one producer camp, but I didn't pitch in for placements on that camp. I was more of their public speaker. Then we had, if you guys follow this one, I was invited to a group. Shout out to Major 7, invited me to his private group. And now my goal is, before I ever ask of anything in this group, I say, how do I add value to the group? Before I ask for an opportunity, a handout, whatever, a placement, I need to add value to the group. Okay, so shout out to Major Seven and his mastermind group, because I'm in there. And then we have this one, which is corporations and decision makers. So this is when I'm dealing with multiple brands. Okay, I already explained that. And then lastly, you guys have the traditional, again, point man type of approach, which I don't go in as any of these loop makers, beat makers, musician, or songwriter. That's not how I introduce myself to people like a Major Seven. I introduce myself as a person who adds value on the business level, deal flow. I'm like, how can I create opportunity to be downstream to give you something? Okay, so that adds value to everybody that they're galvanizing. That's my approach. And that's where people get messed up. They always are punching upward. Sometimes we need to create opportunity that comes downward. So that's more advanced for people who know what I'm talking about. So that's my approach to the music industry. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have the most autonomy and the most control when you build your own ecosystem. So I teach all this. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/premium. I have free books on this. Look up the Busy Signal book. Go to busyworksbeats.com/book. I'll leave a link below for that. It's completely free. My producer Bible is all about mindsets you guys need to change to reprogram your subconscious mind to understand stuff like this and create opportunity for yourself and for other folks. Okay, so those two books are completely free. Go to busyworksbeats.com/book. And if you want business training on sales, on email marketing, on building your YouTube and personal brand up, go to busyworksbeats.com/premium. I have all that training there. All right, guys. Peace out. Subscribe if you're new. Like this video. Share with a friend. Peace.